Krell adjusted his secondary eyes and looked at the data pad again. 40 cycles. That was how long he had been doing this job. 40 cycles of watching different species fight, documenting their tactics, recording their victories and defeats. He was good at it. The people were known for their observation skills, and Krell had the best record in the Galactic Coalition military archives. The massive windows of the Eternal Harmony showed the planet Verath 7. Spinning below, it was a brown and gray world, ugly to look at but full of valuable minerals, the kind of planet that wars were fought over, and now the Vin Empire wanted it. Krill's communicator buzzed. Another meeting. He folded his forearms and walked through the curved hallways of the flagship. Other species passed him. The tall Morgeth with their blue skin, the floating Kell encased in their liquid spheres, even a few of the new members. Humans, he had seen humans before, of course, everyone had after they joined the Coalition 3 cycles ago. They were strange creatures, soft bodies with no natural armor, no claws, no venom, thick hide. They did not even have multiple limbs to fight with, just 2 arms, 2 legs, and soft skin that seemed like it would tear easily. The Coalition had almost rejected their membership application. How could such weak creatures contribute to galactic security? But humans had passed the basic tests, barely, and they had some acceptable technology, so the Council had voted to let them in, mostly for political reasons. In the war room, dozens of officers stood around the holographic display of Verath 7. The Vin attack was already underway. Red markers showed their forces landing on the northern continent. 3,000 Vin warriors, the Morgeth general announced. Heavy armor division. They will reach the mining facilities in 48 hours if we do not stop them. Krell watched the simulation. The Vin were brutal fighters, 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plates with strength that could bend steel. They did not take prisoners. I recommend we evacuate the mining teams and prepare orbital bombardment, another officer said. Wait, a new voice spoke. Up the room turned to look. A human stood near the back. He wore the simple gray uniform of the Coalition forces. His name tag read Commander Tay. He was not particularly tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair and calm eyes. Nothing about him seemed impressive. Yes, Commander, the Morgeth general asked, his tone making it clear he did not want to hear this. My battalion can hold the northern front, Tay said. Simply, several officers made sounds that Krell recognized as laughter in their various languages. Commander, with respect, you have 200 soldiers. The general said. The Vin have 3,000, and Vin warriors are, well, they are much stronger than humans. We understand the numbers, Tay replied. His face did not change. We can hold the line. The general looked at him for a long moment. Then he waved one large hand. Fine. Humans will take rear supply duties. Transport equipment to the southern bases. Stay away from the combat zones. Ta's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, sir. After the meeting, Krell found himself assigned to a new task. High Command wanted documentation of the human battalion's performance, or more accurately, they wanted documentation of what would happen when humans faced real combat for the first time, a training case study. They called it an example of why physical strength mattered in warfare. Krell did not argue. He had documented stranger things. He took a shuttle down to the planet's surface. The Next day, the human base was smaller than he expected, simple buildings made of quick construction materials. Soldiers moved around carrying equipment, checking weapons, loading supplies onto vehicles. Krello approached a group of 3 humans working near a transport truck. His translator captured their conversation, telling you the spicy noodles were better at the last base. One of them was saying he was a thick-built human with short black hair. His name tag read, "Wu, everything tastes the same in space." A woman replied. She had her hair tied back and was organizing medical supplies into neat rows. Her tag said, "Hi. You two complain too much." The third one said he was leaner than Wu with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. Bin was written on his uniform. He had 3 stripes on his sleeve. A squad leader, Krell's database, told him. Krello made a clicking sound to announce himself. All 3 humans turned to look at him. Their hands moved slightly, not quite reaching for their weapons, but getting ready to. "Interesting observer, Krell," he introduced himself. "I will be documenting your battalion's operations." Ben nodded slowly. "Welcome. Though I think you might be disappointed. They have us on supply duty, standard protocol." Krell said, "Your species is new to coalition warfare, right?" Hi said, going back to her medical supplies. "Too fragile for real combat." "We have heard that before." Wu laughed. It was a short, hard sound. "Give us 6 months, we will change their minds." Krello made notes on his data pad. Confidence was good, but these humans did not understand what they were saying. The Vin would tear them apart in seconds if they ever actually faced them in battle. Commander Tay called a battalion meeting. That evening, 200 humans gathered in the largest building. Krello watched from the side, recording everything. Orders came through. Tay announced, "We move south at dawn, supply transport in base construction duties." A murmur went through the crowd. Krello heard disappointment in their voices. "I know this is not what we trained for," Tay continued, "but these are our orders. We follow them, we do the job right, we prove ourselves useful." He paused. "Our time will come." Humans nodded. They did not argue or complain more. They simply accepted it. Disciplined, at least that was something. That night, Krello could not sleep. His sleep cycle did not match the planet's rotation. Anyway, he walked through the quiet human base, observing. He found Hai still awake, checking her medical equipment for the 3rd time. "Do you always work this late?" Krello asked. She jumped slightly, then laughed. "You walk quietly for someone with how many legs?" 6, Krello said. "And you did not answer my question." Hai shrugged. "I like to be prepared. In combat, seconds matter. If I need something and cannot find it, someone dies." She looked at her organized supplies. "So I check and then I check again. You will not see combat on this mission," Krello reminded her. Her eyes met his, all 6 of his eyes. "Maybe," she said, "but I prepare anyway." Krello returned to his quarters, thinking about that conversation. These humans were strange. They prepared for battles they would never fight. They talked about changing minds and proving themselves. They did not seem to understand their own limitations. The morning came with alarms. Vin forces had changed direction. Instead of moving toward the mining facilities, they were heading north, directly toward the human base. In the command center, the Morgeth general's face filled the screen. All human personnel Evacuate immediately. Retreat to southern safe zones, that is. An order. Commander Tay looked at the tactical display. The VIN were 3 hours away, maybe 4 if they moved slowly. Requesting permission to establish defensive positions, Tay said calmly. Negative, you have 200 soldiers against 3,000 VIN. Evacuate now. Tay closed his eyes for just a moment. When he opened them, something in his expression had changed. Understood, sir. We will hold the line until evacuation is complete. That is not, the general started to say. But Tay had already ended the call. Krello watched as the human commander turned to his officers. Defensive positions north and east approaches. Heavy weapons on the ridges. Medical station and the reinforced bunker. We hold for 6 hours minimum. The officers did not question it. They simply moved to carry out the orders. Bin's squad was assigned to the eastern trench line, as Krello followed to document them. He heard Wu speaking quietly. Just like training, Wu said, loading his heavy weapon. Training did not have real VIN trying to kill us, Hai replied. But she was smiling. Details, Bin said. He checked his rifle one more time. Remember what the commander always says. The 3 of them spoke together like it was something they had repeated many times before. There is no such thing as impossible, only expensive. Krello did not understand what that meant, but he recorded it anyway. In 3 hours he would understand. In 3 hours, everything he thought he knew about humans would change forever. The trenches smelled like fresh dirt and human sweat. Krello crouched behind the defensive wall, his data pad ready, his camera units recording everything around him. Bin's squad made final preparations. Wu set up his heavy weapon on a mounted tripod. The gun was large, designed for sustained fire. Krello had seen weapons like it before, but never fired by such small creatures. Could a human even handle the recoil? Hai arranged her medical supplies within arm's reach. Bandages, injectors, synthetic blood packs. Her hands moved with practiced speed, placing each item in a specific spot. She was humming something, a song. Maybe. Strange behavior before a battle. Ben stood at the edge of the trench, looking through electronic binoculars at the northern horizon. His face was calm. Too calm. Krello had seen many species prepare for combat. Usually there was fear, nervous energy. These humans seemed almost relaxed. Movement, Bin said quietly. 3 km out. Everyone in the trench tensed, but not with fear. With focus, the VIN came into view like a dark wave. Even from this distance, Krello could see their massive forms, 8 ft tall, maybe more. Their natural armor plates caught the sun, making them look like moving boulders. 3,000 of them. The ground shook as they marched. Krell's species had fought the VIN before. The standard military response was simple: retreat and call for orbital support. No ground force could face them in direct combat. It was suicide. All stations hold fire. Commander Tay's voice came through the communication system. Let them close to 1 kilometer. Make every shot count. Krello turned to Bin. You know you cannot win this, he said, keeping his voice low. Why not retreat while there is time? Bin glanced at him. We have our orders. Your orders were to hold until evacuation was complete. Everyone else has evacuated. You can leave now. A small smile appeared on Bin's face. No one told us to leave, so we stay. The logic made no Sense orders were about achieving. Objectives not about literal interpretation of words, but before Krello could argue, Wu spoke up. Besides, the heavy weapons soldier said, checking his ammunition counter. Where would we go? They would just chase us. Better to fight here where we have positions. Hai nodded, and someone needs to slow them down by time for the colony ships to launch. That someone might as well be us. Krello wanted to explain that buying time was pointless if everyone died, but the Vin were at 2 km now, close enough to see their faces, close enough to see their weapons, close enough to see death approaching. 1 kilometer. Ben announced, all stations weapons free. Tay commanded. Fire. The world exploded with noise. Wu's heavy gun roared to life. The recoil was massive, but he held it steady, his body absorbing the shock. Bullets tore across the battlefield in glowing lines. Other positions opened fire, the air filled with the sound of human weapons. Krello watched the tactical display on his pad. The Vin line wavered. Some fell, but not enough, not nearly enough. They kept coming, closing the distance, roaring their war cries. Reload, Wu shouted. His hands moved in a blur, ejecting the spent ammunition container and slamming in a new one. 5 seconds. He was firing again in 5 seconds. The Vin reached 500 m. Some of them had begun firing back. Energy bolts hit the defensive walls, melting the material. 1 bolt screamed past Krell's head, close enough that he felt the heat. 2 close. Hai, we have wounded at position 3. Someone called over the radio. On my way, Hai replied. She grabbed her medical pack and ran into the open, while energy bolts flew through the air. Krello watched in disbelief. She should wait until the fire decreased, but she did not wait. She just ran. The Vin reached 300 m. Krello could see their eyes now cold, hungry. They looked at the human positions like a predator looks at prey. Ben, someone shouted. East approach is collapsing. They are breaking through. Ben did not hesitate. Wu suppressing fire on the center. Everyone else with me. He vaulted over the trench wall. Others followed. Krello counted 7 humans running directly toward a 100 Vin warriors. This was not tactics, this was madness. Krell's training forced him to follow. He had to document this, even if it was just documenting how humans died. The fight at the east approach was chaos. Vin warriors swung their massive weapons. Each blow could crush bones. Human soldiers ducked, rolled, fired at point blank range. Krello saw 1 human, a small female named G, slide under a Vin, swing and shoot upward into a gap in its armor. The Vin fell, but 3 more took its place. Ben fought like nothing Krello had ever seen. He was small compared to the Vin, weak by any measure, but he moved like water. Never where the attacks landed, always firing, always moving, and he was smiling. Actually smiling. Is this fun for you? Krello asked, his translator probably not even working over the noise, but Ben heard somehow. Fun? No, he shouted back, shooting a Vin in the face. But it is what we are good at. A Vin warrior charged at Krello, 8 ft of muscle and armor and rage. Krell froze. This was how he would die, documenting humans. Ben stepped in front of him. Human was half the Vin's size. He fired his rifle until it was empty, then used it as a club, hitting the Vin's knee joint. The creature stumbled. Ben pulled a knife, a simple metal blade, and drove it into the gap in the armor at the neck. The Vin fell, Stay close, Ben told Krell, reloading his rifle. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Worse, this was already impossible, but Ben ran back into the fight and Krell had no choice but to follow. High was at position 3 working on a wounded soldier, a human male named Day had taken an energy bolt to the shoulder. The flesh was burned, the bone visible. He was screaming, "Hold still," High commanded. She injected something. The screaming stopped. Her hands moved over the wound, cleaning, sealing, bandaging around her. The battle raged. Energy bolts hit nearby. She did not flinch, did not look up, just kept working. "You need to move to a safe position," Krell told her. "There are no safe positions," she replied, finishing the bandage. "Day, can you shoot?" The wounded soldier looked at his remaining good arm, picked up his rifle. "Yes." "Then get back on the line. Keep pressure on that wound or you will bleed out." Day nodded and limped back to the trench, still fighting, with one arm and a massive wound. Still fighting. Krell was beginning to understand something terrible. The battle continued for 2 hours. The Vin pushed forward, the humans pushed back. Death was everywhere, but the human line did not break. It bent, it wavered. Soldiers fell, but it did not break. Krell found himself in a crater, taking cover with 5 humans. They were sharing ammunition, helping each other reload. One of them was missing part of his ear, blood running down his face. He was laughing about something. "What is funny?" Krell had to ask the human his name tag said. Han grinned. "I bet Jin 20 credits that I would survive the day without a scratch. Now I have to pay him." He touched his bleeding ear. "This counts as a scratch." Another soldier, a female named Sue, shook her head. "You never win those bets, hun. Never." They were joking in the middle of a battle, while people died around them, while they themselves might die at any moment. They were joking. "Do you not feel fear?" Krell asked. Han looked at him. Really looked at him. "Of course we feel fear. We are terrified. We are always terrified." He checked his rifle. "But what good does it do to show it? Better to laugh, better to fight, better to make death work for its meal." Make death work for its meal? What did that even mean? A massive explosion rocked the crater. Krell's hearing went silent for a moment. When it came back, someone was screaming for a medic. High appeared from nowhere, sliding down into the crater. The wounded soldier had lost a leg, completely gone. He would die in minutes. High went to work. Tourniquet, injections, sealing foam in the wound. Her uniform was covered in blood, some her own, some from others. She did not stop, did not slow. "High, you are wounded," Ben said, appearing beside her. He pointed to her side where her uniform was torn and dark with blood. "Later," she said, "after I stabilize him." High, later. She did not look up from her work. Her hand shook slightly from exhaustion or fear or pain. Krell could not tell, but she kept working. The wounded soldier stopped screaming, looked down at where his leg used to be, looked at High. "Will I live?" "Yes," she said firmly, "but you need to be evacuated." "After," he said. "After what?" "After we win." High stared at him, then she laughed. It was a tired, slightly hysterical sound. "You idiot. Fine. After we win." Krell's data pad was full of recordings, hours of footage, all of it showing the same impossible thing. Humans refusing to quit, humans refusing to retreat, humans refusing to die, but they were dying, slowly, steadily. The Human numbers decreased. Krello watched. The tactical display, 200 had become 160, then 140. The Vin had lost many warriors too, but they had thousands too. Spare at the 4-hour mark, Commander. Ta's voice came over the radio. All stations prepare for counterattack. We break their center line in 5 minutes. Counterattack. Ben heard Krell's translator catch that. Thought you heard the commander, he said, reloading every weapon he carried. Time to stop defending. You are losing. Krello could not help but say it. Your numbers are cut in half. Counterattacking is suicide. Ben looked at him with those calm, terrible eyes. Maybe, but we are still here, and they thought we would run in. The first hour, he checked his rifle. One more time. Never let the enemy think they have won, even if they have. Especially if they have. Counterattack began with Wu's heavy gun laying down, covering fire. Then humans poured out of the trenches, not in retreat, not in defense, in attack. They ran toward the Vin center, firing, throwing grenades, screaming, and the Vin line, which had been pushing forward for 4 hours, stopped because 3,000 warriors looked at 140 humans charging them, wounded and bleeding and refusing to die, and something changed. Krello saw it in the Vin faces. Confusion, then something else, fear. The mighty Vin Empire. Warriors who had conquered a dozen worlds, creatures who knew nothing but victory. They were afraid of humans. The counterattack lasted 20 minutes, 20 minutes of pure chaos that Krell's mind still struggled to process. When it ended, the humans retreated back to their trenches, but the Vin center line had pulled back 300m, given by creatures who never retreated. The cost was visible everywhere. More humans fell. Krello lost count. That was when the artillery started. The Vin had brought their big guns into range. Shells began falling on the human positions, massive explosions that threw dirt and bodies into the air. The eastern trench line, where Krello had been watching Ben's squad, took a direct hit. Krello found himself running. His 6 legs carried him faster than any human could move, but somehow Ben was right beside him and Hai was ahead of them both, medical pack bouncing on her back. Collapsed bunker, someone shouted over the radio. Multiple casualties, we need help. The bunker complex was partially underground, reinforced with concrete and steel, but a Vin artillery shell had hit it directly. Half the structure had caved in. Krello could see soldiers digging through the rubble with their bare hands. Wu is in there, Hai said, her voice tight. She started pulling at a massive concrete block. It did not move. She pulled harder. Her fingers bled. The block did not move. Ben was beside her. Other soldiers joined. Together they moved it centimeter by centimeter. Then, all at once, it shifted. The space beneath was dark, dusty. Krello heard moaning. I need light, Hai called out. Immediately, a dozen flashlights pointed into the hole. She crawled inside. Without hesitation, Krello followed. His observer duties compelled him. Inside, the space was tight, cramped, designed for humans, barely large enough for Krello. 3 soldiers were trapped. One was clearly dead, his body crushed by falling debris. The second was unconscious but breathing. The third was Wu, the heavy weapons soldier, sat propped against the wall. His left arm hung at a wrong angle, completely shattered. A metal bar had gone through his abdomen and pinned him to the wall. He was pale, sweating, dying. Hey, hi. He said weakly, bad news, I see it. She replied, crawling to him. Her hands moved over the wound, assessing Krello. Could tell from her expression that it was hopeless. The metal bar had pierced vital organs. Moving it would kill him, leaving it would kill him slower. Can you get me out? Wu asked. Hai looked at the bar. At the wall at Wu. Yes, she lied. Wu smiled. It was a sad smile, a knowing smile. You are a terrible liar. You always have been. Another artillery shell hit nearby. The bunker shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The walls groaned. This entire structure was unstable. We need to evacuate. Ben said he had crawled in behind them. This whole section is collapsing, not without Wu. Hai said. Hai, not without him. Wu coughed. Blood came out. Hai, listen to the squad leader. Get out. No, that is an order. I'm still technically your superior. Since when do you pull rank? Tears were running down Hai's face now, cutting lines through the dirt and blood. Since when? Since now. Wu looked at Ben. Get her out. Ben did not move. He was staring at Wu and LT Unk and GT's weapon. The heavy gun had fallen when the ceiling collapsed. It was sitting in the corner. Damaged but possibly functional. Can you still fire? Ben asked. Wu looked at his shattered arm, his impaled body. With what? My good looks, your right arm is fine. The gun has a floor mount. We can set it up here. Ben was talking faster now. This position has a clear view of the Vin approach. You could provide covering fire for the entire western line. I am pinned to a wall. Gun does not need you to move. It just needs you to aim and shoot. Krello watched this exchange in growing horror. You cannot be serious. This structure is collapsing. Leaving him here is leaving him to die. He is dying anyway, Ben said quietly. But he can still fight, still help. Wu was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. Again, this time it was genuine. Set up the gun. Wu, no. Hai pleaded. We can find another way. We can. Hai. Wu's voice was soft. Remember what we always say. We do the job, we finish the mission. We bring everyone home. He coughed again. More blood. You cannot bring me home. But you can let me make sure everyone else gets there. Another shell hit closer. The bunker shuddered violently. Decide now. Ben said. We stay and die with him, or we let him do what he wants to do. Hai looked at Wu for a long moment, then she nodded. She leaned forward and kissed his forehead. You better take out 100 of those bastards. 200. Wu replied. I feel motivated. They worked quickly. Ben and another soldier set up the heavy gun on its floor mount, positioning it toward the opening. Hai gave Wu every painkiller she had, enough to keep him conscious but dull the agony. She set up an IV line, feeding him fluids to keep him alive just a little longer. Ammunition? Wu asked. They had 3 containers, maybe 5 minutes of sustained fire, maybe. Make them count, Ben said. Wu nodded. He tested the gun with his good arm. The movement made him gasp in pain, but the gun responded. Still works. Get out of here. They crawled back out. Krello was the last to leave. He looked back once. Wu sat in the darkness alone, dying with his finger on the trigger of his weapon. The human gave him a small wave. Hey, observer. Wu called out. Make sure you document this part. Tell them I went out shooting. Krello could not speak. He just nodded and crawled out. Outside, the battle continued. More artillery, more Vin pushing forward. The human lines were breaking in places. Soldiers fell back, found new positions, kept fighting. Krello found himself in a secondary trench with Bin's remaining squad. Only 3 of them left now. Bin, Hai, and a soldier named Ren. That was all. Why? Krello finally asked. He had been documenting humans for hours, watching them die for hours. He needed to understand. Why do you fight like this? Any other species would have retreated, would have surrendered, would have saved themselves. Ben was silent for a moment, checking his dwindling ammunition. Then he spoke. Do you know about Earth? He asked. Your home world? Yes. Do you know our history? Krello consulted his database. You had many wars, more than most species, before achieving space flight. Many wars been repeated. Thousands of wars for thousands of years. We fought over everything: land, resources, ideas, gods. We fought each other so much that warfare became part of our culture, part of our identity. Another explosion, closer. Ben did not flinch, just kept talking. We had a saying on Earth from an old empire. They said the empire wanted peace, but if they could not have peace, they wanted victory. And if they could not have victory, they wanted death with honor. But surrender, he shook his head. Surrender was not an option. That is insane, Krello said. Maybe, but we evolved as hunters, persistence hunters. We did not chase prey because we were faster. We chased them because we did not stop. We followed for days, weeks, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. We did not give up. Ben loaded his last magazine. That is what we are, creatures who do not give up, even when we should. Hai added her own thought. My grandmother was in Earth's last major war. She was trapped in a city for 6 months. No food, no medicine. The enemy kept saying surrender or die. You know what the defenders said? Krello shook his head. They said come and take it, and they meant it. The enemy tried for 6 months, never got past the first wall. Hai checked her medical supplies. Almost empty. We are stubborn, maybe stupidly stubborn, but it is what we are. A message came over the radio. Commander Tay's voice was hoarse. All stations, Vin forces are regrouping for final assault. Estimate 20 minutes. Reinforcements will not arrive in time. This is your chance to evacuate. No shame in it. You all fought well. Silence on the radio. Then one by one, voices responded. Position 1 staying. Position 2 staying. Position 4 staying. Medical station staying. On end. On every position, every soldier staying. Commander Tay's voice cracked. Slightly understood. Then we make them pay for every meter, for every second. We show them what it means to fight. Humans. See you on the other side. Krello looked at the 3 humans in the trench with him, wounded, exhausted, almost out of ammunition, facing certain death. You could still leave, he said. I have a shuttle. I could evacuate you. Ben smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had already made peace with their fate. Observer Krello, he said, watch what happens next. Watch and remember, because this is what we do. This is what humans do. Wu's heavy gun opened fire from the collapsed bunker. Even from here, Krello could hear it, could see the tracer rounds lighting up the approaching Vin forces. 1 human alone, dying, still fighting. That is what we do. Ben repeated. We fight until we cannot fight anymore, and then we fight some more. We do not know how to quit. We never learned that lesson. The Vin began their final assault. Thousands of Them against less than 100 humans. And the humans kept fighting. Krell watched it all, documented it all, and finally began to understand what the galaxy should fear about humans, not their strength, not their technology, not their numbers, their absolute, terrifying refusal to stop. The battle ended not with victory, but with silence. The Vin withdrew not because they were defeated, not because they could not break the human lines. They withdrew because, in the words of their commander captured later, the cost exceeded strategic value of the objective. Krell stood in what remained of the eastern trench line, his data pad hanging forgotten in one of his hands. The sun was setting on Varath 7, painting everything in shades of red and orange. It made the blood harder to see, made the death seem less real, but it was real, so terribly real. Bodies everywhere, human and Vin both. The humans had lost 123 soldiers. 123 out of 200, more than half their battalion gone. Medical shuttles were landing now, coalition reinforcements that arrived too late to fight, but in time to help. Medics from different species moved through the battlefield, searching for survivors, marking the dead. Krell found Hai sitting on the ground, her back against a broken wall. She was staring at nothing. Her medic uniform was more blood than fabric now. Her hands shook. A Kel medic floated up to her. "You are wounded," the liquid voice said through its translator. "You need treatment." Hai did not respond, did not even look up. "She cannot hear you," Ben said. Appearing from somewhere, he had a bandage on his head. His left arm was in an improvised sling, but he was alive. "She is in shock," the Kelmedic scanned Hai with its instruments. 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding severe, lacerations. She should be unconscious. "How is she still sitting up?" "She is stubborn," Ben said softly. He knelt beside Hai. "Hai medical is here. You can rest now." Hai's eyes focused slightly. "Did we get everyone?" "Everyone who could be saved." Wu Ben was quiet, then he shook his head. Something broke in Hai's expression. She made a sound that was not quite a scream, not quite a sob, just pain made audible. Ben held her as she finally broke down, finally let herself feel everything she had been holding back. Krell turned away. This felt too personal to document. He walked through the battlefield, recording it all. Out of habit, this was his job, document everything, but his hands were not steady, his thoughts were not clear. He found Wu's position, the collapsed bunker. Medical teams were carefully removing the body. Wu had died somewhere during the last hour of battle, bled out, or simply given up, but his finger was still on the trigger, and the ammunition containers were empty, all of them. He took down 43 confirmed, a human soldier told Krell, 43 Vin warriors by himself. While dying, Krell looked at the heavy gun, then at Wu and LT Unk and GT's body being carefully lifted onto a stretcher. The humans moved him with such care, such gentleness, like he was sleeping, not dead. "Why do you care so much?" Krell heard himself ask. "He is gone. His body does not matter now." The soldier looked at him, really looked at him, because he was one of us, because he mattered, because we do not leave our dead behind. He touched Wu's shoulder one last time. "Fair winds, brother, we will remember." Commander Tay was in what remained of the command center. He sat at a desk, a data pad in front of him, writing casualty reports. His hands trembled as he typed. He had a medical patch on his neck another on his leg, but he was alive. He had led from the front lines, fought alongside his soldiers, and somehow survived. Commander Krell said, approaching. Carefully, Tay looked up. His eyes were red from smoke or tears. Krell could not tell. Observer Krell, I hope you got good documentation. Coalition Command will want to know how we failed. Failed? Krell's translator almost glitched on the word. You held against impossible odds. You stopped event. Assault. You did not fail. I lost 123 soldiers. Tay looked back at his pad at the long list of names. 123 people who trusted me, who followed my orders. They are dead because I chose to fight instead of retreat. You would have been court-martialed if you retreated. Better to face trial than write these reports. Ta's voice broke. Better to lose my rank than lose my soldiers. Krell had documented many commanders over the years. Most treated casualties as numbers, statistics acceptable losses, but Tay looked at that list like each name was a personal failure, like each death was his own. They chose to stay, Krell said quietly. When you offered them the chance to evacuate, they chose to stay because I trained them to. Tay put his head in his hands. Because humans do not know when to quit. Because we make a virtue of stupidity and call it courage. For the first time, Krell understood. These humans were not fearless. They were not immune to pain or loss. They felt everything. They simply chose to fight anyway, chose to sacrifice anyway, chose to refuse defeat even when it cost them everything. That made it worse, so much worse. The memorial service was held 2 days later. The human survivors gathered at the grave site. They had buried their dead in the northern field overlooking the valley they had defended. Simple markers, names, and dates. Nothing fancy. 77 humans stood in formation. All that remained of 200, wounded, bandaged, some on crutches or in wheelchairs, but standing, refusing to sit, even when their bodies screamed for rest. Commander Tay spoke. His voice was steady now, controlled. We gather to remember our fallen, to honor their sacrifice, to promise that we will never forget. He read each name, all 123. As he read, one soldier would step forward, salute, and place a stone on that grave. 1 stone per soldier, a tradition from Earth, a way to say, I remember you. When he reached Wu's name, Hai stepped forward. She was on crutches, her ribs wrapped, her face still pale, but she placed her stone carefully. Then she spoke. You were terrible at cards. You complained about the food. You made stupid jokes at the wrong time. Her voice wavered. You were my friend and you died saving people. That is all anyone can ask. Rest well, Wu. We will see you on the other side. Krell recorded it all, but he also found himself placing a stone. He did not know why. It was not his tradition, but it felt right, felt necessary. After the service, Krell interviewed survivors. Coalition command wanted detailed reports, wanted to understand what happened. A soldier named Dal told him, I thought I was going to die every single second, but my squad leader kept fighting, so I kept fighting. And then I was still alive. And then the Vin left, and I could not believe it. Another soldier, a female named Un, said, my rifle jammed 3 times. 3 times I thought I was dead. But Ben showed me how to clear it faster, and then I was shooting again. I did not have time to be scared, just time to do the job. Ren, one of the Last three from Ben's squad spoke. Quietly, we knew we might die, probably. Would die, but someone had to hold that line, someone had to show the Vin they could not just take what they wanted. Why not us, such a simple question, such a devastating answer. Krell found Ben on the third day, sitting alone on a ridge overlooking the battlefield. The human squad leader was watching the sunset. His arm was still in a sling. New scars marked his face. May I join you? Krell asked. Ben nodded. They sat in silence for a while. Then Ben spoke. Command offered me a promotion, squad leader to platoon commander, to replace one of the officers we lost. Will you accept? I do not know. Ben picked up a small stone, turning it over in his hand. Every promotion means watching more people die, means writing more casualty reports, means carrying more names. He was quiet. I'm not sure I am strong enough for that. You held the line against 3,000 Vin warriors. You are strong enough for anything. Ben looked at him. Physical strength is easy. Observer Krell, emotional strength, that is much harder. He dropped the stone. Do you know what the worst part is? Krell waited. I would do it again if ordered. If needed, I would hold that line again. I would watch my soldiers die again, because that is what we do. That is what humans do. He laughed, but it was a hollow sound. We never learn, we never stop, we just keep fighting and dying and calling it duty. Krell thought about that, about everything he had witnessed, about the data on his pad, hours of footage showing human courage and human death, human strength and human weakness, all of it real, all of it terrifying. The galaxy should fear you, Krell said. Finally, why? Because you cannot be stopped, cannot be scared into surrender, cannot be negotiated with. Once you decide something matters. Krell looked at the battlefield below. Because you would rather die than lose. And that makes you the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Ben considered that. Maybe, but it also makes us predictable. If you know we will never quit, you know how to plan around it. The Vin knew you would not quit. They still left. They left because the cost was too high. Ben stood up slowly, favoring his injured arm. That is the secret. Observer Krell, we do not win by being stronger. We win by making victory too expensive, by making the enemy pay blood for every meter until they decide it is not worth it. And if they decide it is worth it, if they keep coming. Ben smiled. It was a tired smile, a sad smile. Then we keep fighting until the last bullet, the last breath, the last human standing. That is what we do. That is what we will always do. He walked away, leaving Krell alone on the ridge with his recordings and his thoughts. 2 days later, Hai received new legs. Cybernetic prosthetics. State of the art. She was learning to walk again, taking careful steps in the medical bay. When Krell visited, she was arguing with the doctors. I want to return to active duty, she insisted. You need months of recovery and physical therapy. The doctor said, I can do therapy in the field. It does not work that way. Hai's jaw said in that stubborn way Krell had seen before. I am cleared for duty, or I quit the military and re-enlist as a new recruit. The doctor sighed. Why? Why do you want to go back so badly? Hai looked at her new legs, at her hands, still healing from the battle. Because someone needs to, because there are more fights coming, because next time maybe I save someone who would have died. Maybe I bring one more person home. She met the doctor's eyes. That is Worth it, that is worth everything. Krello left the medical bay. Understanding, finally completely. Understanding, humans were not fearless. They were terrified, but they fought. Anyway, they were not strong, they were fragile, but they endured anyway. They were not immortal, they died so easily. But they refused to stay down, that was why the galaxy would fear them, not for what they were but for what they refused to stop being: soldiers, warriors, protectors, humans. The Galactic Council chamber was massive. Delegates from 47 species sat in circular tiers looking down at the presentation platform. Krello stood at the center, his data pad connected to the holographic display system. 3 weeks had passed since Vareth 7, 3 weeks of compiling footage, writing reports, and trying to explain what he had witnessed. Observer Krell, the council speaker, announced, "You may present your findings on human military performance." Krello activated his display. The first image appeared: the human battalion. Before the battle, 200 soldiers in neat formation, young faces, confident expressions. Most of them were dead now. I was tasked with documenting the human battalion's first major combat operation. Krello began. I expected to record a failure, a learning experience. For a new coalition species, he paused. Instead, I witnessed something that has fundamentally changed my understanding of warfare. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Morgeth general who had dismissed the humans sat in the second tier, his face unreadable. Krello played the first video clip: human soldiers preparing for battle, high-checking her medical supplies, Wu mounting his heavy weapon, Bin looking through binoculars at the approaching Vin forces. The humans faced 3,000 Vin warriors with 200 soldiers. By all tactical calculations, they should have retreated immediately. The survival probability was less than 1%. He played footage of the battle: the initial Vin assault, the human defensive line holding, then holding more energy, bolts filling the air, explosions, death. They did not retreat even when given the chance, even when ordered to evacuate. They stayed and fought. Council member from the crystalline shard species spoke up. Observer: we appreciate documentation of bravery, but surely this report is simply showing that humans make poor tactical decisions. Krello looked at the speaker. That is what I thought initially. He pulled up new footage. Then I began to understand. He showed the counterattack. 140 humans charging 3,000 Vin. Showed Wu in the collapsed bunker, dying but still firing. Showed Bin fighting with a knife against an 8-foot warrior. Showed Hai treating wounded while energy bolts melted the ground beside her. Humans do not fight to win, they fight to not lose. There is a difference. More murmurs, confused, skeptical. Krell continued. Every species in this council has a breaking point, a calculation where retreat becomes logical, where survival outweighs objective. Humans, he paused, finding the words. Humans have no such calculation, or if they do, it is set so high that it might as well not exist. He played the audio recording. Bin explaining human history, thousands of years of warfare, persistence, hunting, cultural refusal to surrender. The words echoed through the chamber. Humans evolved as predators who won through endurance. They applied this to warfare. They do not need to be stronger or faster or better armed. They simply need to not quit, and they will not quit. Ever, a video played showing the aftermath, bodies being recovered, high. Placing a stone on Wu's grave, Commander Tay reading names, 77 soldiers standing. At attention, wounded but refusing to sit, the human battalion lost 62%. Casualties, 62%, and yet when I interviewed the survivors, do you know what they asked? Silence in the chamber, they asked when they could return to duty. They asked if there were more battles coming. They volunteered for the next assignment before they had even finished healing. Krell's voice grew stronger. This is not bravery. This is not tactics. This is psychological warfare on a level we have never encountered. He showed footage of the Vin withdrawal, showed their faces, showed the moment when confusion turned to fear. The Vin Empire has conquered 12 worlds. They have broken armies 3 times their size. They retreated from 200 humans, not because they could not win, because the cost became too high, because humans made them afraid. The chamber was completely silent now. Every delegate watched the screen. Krell pulled up his final piece of evidence. Medical records. Chai standing with new cybernetic legs, arguing with doctors. The date stamp showed it was 5 days after the battle. This soldier lost both legs, suffered severe internal injuries, spent 4 hours treating other wounded while bleeding herself. She is demanding to return to frontline duty. Her request has been approved. He closed that file and opened another. There are 73 similar requests. Soldiers missing limbs, soldiers with organs replaced, soldiers who should be retiring on medical disability, all requesting immediate return to combat duty. A new face appeared on screen, a young human woman. Krell recognized her features similar to Hai's. This is Na. She enlisted 2 weeks ago. She is Hai's younger sister. When asked why she joined, she said she wanted to live up to the family tradition. The family tradition is dying for the coalition. Krell let that sink in, and she is not alone. Human recruitment has increased 40% since Varath 7. The casualties did not scare them. It inspired them. The Morgeth general stood. Observer Krell, are you suggesting humans are somehow superior warriors? No, Krell said firmly. I am suggesting they are fundamentally different. Physically, humans are weak. Their bodies are fragile. They die easily, but psychologically. He gestured to the screen where footage played of Ben standing on the ridge. Psychologically, they are incompatible with the concept of surrender, with the concept of acceptable losses, with the concept of it is not worth it. He pulled up tactical analysis. In conventional warfare, both sides calculate costs. When costs exceed benefits, the logical action is withdrawal. Humans break this model. They do not calculate costs, or rather they calculate them, acknowledge them, and ignore them. This makes them unpredictable, dangerous, and terrifying to fight against. A council member from the Avon species spoke, but they lost. They took massive casualties. How is this effective? Krell zoomed in on a map showing the Vin Empire. After Varath 7, the Vin withdrew from 3 contested border worlds, not because of military defeat, because their commanders reported that further human encounters are not strategically viable. The Vin are afraid of humans. He let that statement hang in the air. I have compiled 43 cycles of combat documentation. I have studied warfare across dozens of species. Never have I Seen one species make another retreat. Through fear alone, through reputation. Alone. Krell's 6 eyes met the council. Members, humans have been in this war. For 3 cycles, they have already gained a reputation, the Vin call them. The ones who do not stop, other species, have similar names, all meaning the same thing. He played one final clip. Commander Tay receiving his promotion. Accepting assignment to lead an assault battalion, an impossible mission to retake a fortified position. Tay accepting without hesitation. Commander Tay has been promoted to Colonel. He requested assignment to the most dangerous sector. His depleted battalion volunteered to go with him. Not because they want to die, but because they believe, truly believe, that they can win, that they will win. Because losing is not something they consider. Krell powered down his display, stood in the center of the chamber facing the council. My recommendation is this: humans should never be assigned to minor conflicts, never to political peacekeeping, never to deterrent displays. He paused. Humans should be deployed only when we need something, held at any cost when we need an enemy to break from fear, when we need soldiers who will not retreat under any circumstances. That sounds like you want to use them as cannon fodder. Someone said no. Krell replied, cannon fodder implies they are disposable, implies they will simply die. Humans do not simply die, they fight, they endure. They make the enemy pay in blood for every meter, every second. They make victory so expensive that enemies choose not to achieve it. The Morgoth general, descended from his tier, approached. Krell, you are saying we should fear our own allies? Krell thought about Bin, about Hai, about Wu dying alone in a collapsed bunker, still firing until his ammunition ran out, about 77 wounded soldiers standing at attention when they should be in hospital beds. I am saying we should respect them, appreciate them, and never ever make them angry at us. Krell pulled up one last image, the photo he kept on his personal pad. Wu's final position, the empty ammunition containers, the blood stains, the 43 marked Vin positions he had killed from that spot. This is what one human did. One dying human. Imagine what 200,000 could do, what 2 million could do. Krell looked around the chamber. We do not fear humans because they are warriors. We fear them because they have made an art form of refusing to die and, worse, refusing to let each other die. The council was silent, thinking, processing. Finally, the council speaker stood. Thank you, Observer Krell. This council will take your recommendations under advisement. The meeting adjourned. Delegates filed out, talking in hushed tones. Krell remained at the center of the chamber, alone with his thoughts. 3 days later, a quiet resolution passed. Human military units would be deployed only to critical missions, high-risk, high-value operations, never in small conflicts where their particular brand of warfare would be wasted. It was not official policy, just a quiet understanding, an acknowledgement that humans were different, special, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with weapons or tactics. Krell received a message from Bin, the squad leader, now platoon commander, had sent a simple text. Thank you for telling our story. Honestly, we know what we are, we know what we cost. We just want people to remember that the cost is always paid willingly. Tell the council we are ready for the next mission. We are always ready. Krell looked at that message for a long time, Then he returned to his quarters and wrote his personal log, one that would not be part of official records, the one that was just for him. Today I realize something terrible and wonderful. Humanity will either save the galaxy or terrify it into peace. Because no enemy wants to fight a species that treats death as an acceptable price for victory, that treats casualties as motivation rather than deterrent, that turns every battle into a statement: you can kill us, but you cannot beat us. I have spent my career documenting warfare. I thought I understood it, but humans have shown me I understood nothing. War is not about who is stronger, it is about who is willing to endure more. And humans, he paused, finding the words, humans will endure everything, absolutely everything, until there is nothing left to endure. The galaxy should fear them, but it should also be grateful, because when the real threats come, the enemies who will not negotiate, the battles that must be won at any cost, we will need humans. We will need their stubbornness, their refusal to quit, their absolute insane determination. I witnessed humans step onto the battlefield, and I finally grasped why the galaxy dreads them, not because they are monsters, but because they are heroes, and heroes are willing to pay prices that monsters cannot imagine. He finished writing and closed his log. Outside his window, a transport ship was preparing to launch. Krell zoomed his view. He could see soldiers boarding. Human soldiers. He recognized some faces from Varith 7, high with her new legs, Bin, with his healed scars, and new faces too. Fresh recruits, including Na, who looks so much like her sister. They were heading to the frontier to another impossible mission, another battle where survival was unlikely. They were smiling as they boarded. Krell kept a photo on his desk now, not for inspiration, but as a reminder that there were forces in the universe more powerful than weapons, more powerful than numbers, more powerful than logic. The photo showed Wu's last stand, one human, one dying human, making death work for its meal. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. That was their curse. They would fight. They would bleed, they would die, but they would never ever quit, and somehow, impossibly, that made all the difference.